Today I have undoubtedly the most exciting video I've had on my channel and probably one of the most exciting pieces of news that the WK platform has had for years now. This is because I will be installing the first ever production set of Fender flares made specifically for a Grand Cherokee WK, that is 2005 to 2010 Grand Cherokees. That being said, these are not the first ever flares put on by this company. The company is Fjallasport. They're a company out of Iceland, so they actually require these kind of things to cover their larger tires for the terrain that they have. But they have actually installed a set, or maybe two even, of these Fender flares over there. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe these are the first ever WK Fender flares stateside. So that's pretty cool to me. I'm super excited to have this done. And a huge shout out to Fjallasport, and I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong, for sending me these to make one of these videos just to help them out and get a video on how to install them and to kind of spread the news. These Fender flares are made out of fiberglass, so they are literally handmade art. Now each and every set of these Fender flares is made specifically for your vehicle. They're made by hand. It's not an easy process. I have firsthand seen how a fiberglass hood was made and the molding and things that go into that. And I know I can tell you it is not easy, but unfortunately, such a complex task does come at a price. These retail for a little bit over 1,000 euros. So that's a little bit over $1,300, I believe. These are a little pricey and you do have to import them from Iceland to the US. So there is a shipping charge as well. Luckily, like I said, Fjallasport helped me out here, got me a set. Installation for these Fender flares is very easy, very straightforward. There is a little bit of drilling required, but if you're getting these Fender flares, you're probably serious about your WK, off-roading, and maybe even tire coverage if that's what you're into. I do have to remove the trim and the rivets that I stuck in here, so I'll do that really quick and I will get to the video of installing them. Included in the kit are 6 fiberglass Fender flares to cover all 4 corners, some masking tape, a bunch of self-tapping screws, and some adhesive. The process is exactly the same for each flare included in the kit, and you can begin by flipping over the flare like this. You'll see that I pre-drilled every hole except for the last one for the sake of the video. Start by marking where you're going to drill the hole, but make sure that when you're marking this hole, that you can fit a self-tapping screw and a wrench behind it. Using a step bit, begin drilling into the fiberglass flare where you mark the hole, ensuring that you go slowly and that you don't drill a hole too big on accident. Using a step bit is crucial to ensure that you don't use a bit that's too large for the fiberglass and end up splitting it or cracking it. Moving over to the Jeep, you're going to start mocking up the Fender flare against the Jeep. This is definitely the hardest part, but it's also very crucial because you're going to line this up in a way that you're going to drill it. So if it's not perfect before you start drilling, it's not going to be perfect after you're drilling either. These Fender flares are a lot heavier than they look, so if you have a friend that can help you out, I definitely recommend using them. I pre-cut many strips of masking tape and then I used a horizontal strip to help secure it a little bit more. Once you have the Fender flare mocked up where you want it to be, go ahead and take a marker and draw a dot through the hole that you drilled in the Fender flare so that when you move on to the next step and remove the Fender flare, you'll know exactly where to drill all of the holes. I'm also taking the marker and I'm drawing where I'm going to be cutting away the OEM fender, since these fenders do allow more clearance for larger tires by cutting away the OEM fender and just making more room for them. Now you can go ahead and remove the masking tape and remove the Fender flare for the next steps. All I'm doing here is making an indent for my drill bit to sit in so the drill bit doesn't slide away from me. I know there's much more professional tools to do this, but this is all I had at the moment. You'll also see the edge of the adhesive because I did actually have these Fender flares installed previously, but I took them off to remake this video and the adhesive was a little tricky to get out. And you'll see that I'm just starting the self-tapping screws here. It's a little bit easier if you go ahead and then start the threading so you're not trying to do that with the Fender flare on. Next up, I'm taking my Dremel and I'm going to start cutting away at the OEM fender. I'm definitely going to have to clean this up a little bit later just because I did a rough cut here, but I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I have a plan for an inner fender and I don't know if I want to use the OEM fender or if I'm just going to build something of my own. With the fender back in place, you're going to start bolting on the self-tapping screws through the holes in the fender flare into the Jeep. Now with the included masking tape, you're going to put a strip as close as you can to the end of the fender flare, nearest to the body panel. And then along the body panel, you're going to leave about a centimeter gap, and then you're going to go along the rest of the Jeep. Using the sealant, you're going to put a thin bead in between the two pieces of masking tape. This sealant is very strong, and like I said, I actually had these fender flares installed and the sealant was able to hold it up on its own. Now remove the masking tape, and I do recommend wearing gloves because this got all over my hands during this. While removing it, if you do have some excess that ends up on the body panel like this, go ahead and remove that immediately because this stuff dries fast and it dries hard. The only extra step that I had to do for the rear was to cut away the bottom portion of the rear fenders in the back because I do have an aftermarket bumper and that does get in the way of the installation. Alright guys, that about wraps up the installation of the Fjallasport fender flares. These things are not only very functional, but they're so sturdy. Like, that's the one thing I did not expect, was a set of fiberglass fender flares to be just really sturdy. So I have a lot of faith in these things. It's just time for me to get some bigger tires and a bigger lift, and I'll really put them to the test and see how much I can stuff up in these things. But a huge thanks for watching. I appreciate your time and staying here, especially if you got to this point. If you haven't already, I would appreciate it if you subscribe, like the video, and comment. Let me know what you think of these fender flares. I know that they're expensive, but they're literally the only option for WK right now. And you have to have a lot of respect for a guy willing to, you know, hand make these things and make the mold. You know, they're a one-off fender flare, so you won't see this anywhere else. Huge shout out to Fjallasport. I really appreciate you guys shipping over a set of these for the channel, for the My Jeep Story rig. So they look awesome. I gotta get these things painted. I'm painting the Jeep soon. Keep an eye out for that. So I'll have this matched up. I think they'll look a lot better, and I gotta do something with the rear because I cut it for the bumper and it looks a little bit weird from the back. You can tell that I cut it, so I'll fix that up. But other than that, they look amazing. They function amazingly. I've had them on for a few weeks now, so I've been meaning to get this video out. I'm sorry it took so long. I know a lot of you were waiting for it. If you're interested in getting a set of these fender flares, I will have the link in the description to Fjallasport's website and the actual link to these fender flares. I will have a post on these on my website, which is myjeepstory.org. I'll post about it just everywhere, so if you don't follow me on Instagram, Facebook, I will post more pictures, and you'll continually see these in updates from now on. Last, if you're looking to support the channel a little bit more, I did start a Patreon. So I have a few contributors to that. If you want to head over there, I just made decals and everything, so you can get yourself a pair of those if you start contributing. If not, I appreciate you just watching anyway, and that about wraps it up. Thanks for watching.